Hello, AP Psychology students, and welcome back. Today we are starting with a new topic. So we're going to be focusing on thinking, problem solving, judgments, decision making. So a lot of the different cognitive processes that we use, daily throughout our lives. So today our learning objective goes with topic 2.2, which is explain how psychological concepts and theories account for thinking, problem solving, judgment, and decision making. So the essential questions we're going to focus on today is what are the basic parts of human thoughts? What strategies do we use to problem solve? And what errors do we make and how can we overcome them? So if we're talking about thought, right, and thinking, cognition, what are the basic components of human thought? So ultimately, most human thought revolves around the idea of a concept. So a concept is any mental grouping of similar objects, ideas, events, and people. Basically, anything that you think of is a concept. So a chair is a concept, a school is a concept, love is a concept, doctor is a concept, right? And when I say these words, you have an understanding, both probably a mental image and a, kind of like thought about what that means. What is a chair, right? Now, in addition to that, usually what our brain does is makes very quick associations between objects that best represent the category. So if you talk about something like a chair, lots of things can be a chair, right? Anything you can sit on, I guess technically is a chair. However, if you really think about the word like chair, what you think of is like an office chair or a dining room chair, something that's like very commonly a chair, even though something else could be a chair if you needed to sit on it, right? So a prototype is the object or event that best represents the category. And all concepts have prototypes. So if I ask you about an Ivy League college, right, maybe Harvard is your prototype. So there's lots of different Ivy League colleges, but if I ask you about a prestigious college or an Ivy League college, maybe Harvard is the first one that comes to mind. Maybe Yale is one that comes to mind. Maybe Princeton. So, but any of those would be an example of a prototype in that they are like the best representative or the most commonly thought of representation of that category or concept. Now, as we are going throughout our lives, we are constantly changing our ideas of concepts, our schemas, our frameworks, our understanding of the world around us. And we talked about this with the development unit, that we are using the concepts of assimilation and accommodation to always influence our schemas and our concepts, right? So if we take a look at this example, this little girl has a schema for fruit, right? For an orange, right? She has an understanding of the concept of an orange. And so she thinks it's round, something she can eat, goes in the fruit bowl. So then she sees an apple, which has a lot of similar characteristics. And she says orange, right? So she's trying to assimilate this new fruit into her old understanding. And her parent or whoever's in the room with her is saying, no, an orange is orange and an apple is red. And both of them are fruits, right? So that's the concept of fruit. However, they are different fruits. So she's changing, she's accommodating her schema of fruit. So, schemas and concepts, they all, they kind of blend together. Sometimes schemas can have multiple concepts. So for example, your schema of like an airport would have so many different concepts in there, right? So you'd have a concept of, luggage. You'd have a concept of security line. You'd have a concept of the plane, right? And all of that would fit into a larger schema. But sometimes a schema can just be one thing. So a schema for fruit, right? So, they're kind of, interconnected in that way. Now, one last thing on the basics of thought. So as we are continuing in this unit, we're really going to be focusing on some of the more higher level thinking skills that we use as we kind of learn to navigate life and grow and change. And these are technically thought of as executive functioning skills or executive functionings. So these are cognitive skills that work together that help us organize, plan, problem solve, make decisions. Ultimately, these are kind of like the special skills that make us uniquely human, right? Most of these are controlled in the frontal lobe. And also, if you've ever, heard, we talked about ADHD or, students who have attention deficit disorder, what ADHD stands for. Sometimes people with those, with that disorder, they often struggle with some of these executive functioning skills. And to be honest, like a lot of us struggle with them, whether or not we have ADHD, because they are skills that require us to be focused, to be disciplined, to have flexibility, to not just do what we want, right? To not just sit around and watch Netflix all day, or look on TikTok all day, right? And so these are skills that they, over time, we work and develop and grow, but they are still something that we can struggle with as we go through our lives. So, like I said, though, in this video, we're going to be focusing on particularly the idea of problem solving. So, when we talk about problem solving, there's a few different ways that humans typically try to solve a problem. So the first way is that we use an algorithm. So an algorithm is a step-by-step process that results in the correct solution every time. It's methodical, it is slow, but it is always accurate. Another way that we could solve a problem is using a heuristic. So a heuristic is a mental shortcut. So it's just something that we use to find a solution. It is very quick, but often prone to error. And then there also is a strategy, and this isn't necessarily a strategy because you're not really doing anything, but there's this quality that humans have sometimes called insight, where you're literally looking at a problem, can't figure out how to solve it, and then, aha, you've got that aha moment, and the answer's there, right? Sudden realization of the solution. So let's talk about a problem and how we might use these different solutions. So let's say I'm going to give you this problem. I want you to unscramble this word, right? What word is here? So if you're going to use an algorithm, there are 90,720 possible letter combinations. So in order for you to use an algorithm, you'd have to come up with a systemic way to use every single possible letter combination to get to the right answer. And this would get you to the right answer eventually, but it would take a very long time. Okay, a heuristic, we're going to start with some shortcuts. So what do we know about how letters work? Well, generally, I don't know of any words where there's two L's next to each other. So if I don't know of any words where there's two L's next to each other, I'm not going to put the two L's next to each other. But I do know a lot of words that have Y at the end. So I'm going to try to rearrange the letters with Y at the end. I also know some letters that have a double O, so maybe I'll try to put those together, right? So I'm using these shortcuts about what I know about the human language and how language works and how letters work to help me get to an answer faster. Now, insight would literally be like me just kind of staring at this and being like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the kind of answer pops in my head, and the answer is psychology, right? So any of these kind of strategies could be used. However, heuristics are the most commonly used, right? They get us to the answer generally quicker, but the only problem is they are sometimes prone to error in that sometimes you come up with an answer that isn't actually correct. Okay, so those are the ways that we solve problems. Now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about things that get in our way when we try to solve problems. So we often struggle to accurately solve a problem, right? We can't come up with the right solution, or we don't know what answer, we don't know which solution to pick. And one of the biggest issues that we have, and this is not a new concept, but it relates back here, is this confirmation bias, right? So as human beings, we tend to only look for information that fits with what we already know. So if we have a problem that we have to solve, right, we tend to look for information that fits with what we want the answer to be, right? What we want the solution to be. And then what ends up happening is we ignore all the evidence that maybe doesn't fit with what we want the answer to be. And in that way, we get an incomplete answer, right? And algorithms, which are the computer, like the TikTok and the Google algorithms, the search algorithms, all of these things that we use, like they harm, or I guess they emphasize confirmation bias in that they show us the results they know we want to see, and then we don't really get the full picture. Another issue with problem solving is a fixation. So this is where the idea that humans have a hard time looking at a problem from a fresh perspective. So not using kind of that top-down processing where we just kind of like think about what we did in the past and do it again. And this shows up in two different ways. So mental sets and functional fixedness. So let's talk about each. So a mental set is when we have a tendency to solve a problem with a new problem with a way that worked in the past. So let's talk about something simplistic like studying. So maybe in middle school or freshman year, you were just told to do the study guide, and you did the study guide and you got an A. So then you get to some more harder level classes, maybe honors or AP, and A, there is no study guide, or you do the study guide, but then you get like a C, D, or F. And a lot of times students just keep doing that because they don't know what else to do, right? Another example of a mental set is with entrances and exits. So, pushing and pulling doors, like why that's so hard is because you just go to what is normal. So an example I have of this is I was in Chile, and there was a Starbucks that I wanted to go into, and I was looking for a door, right? Like a doorway, a handle, these kinds of things. But what I saw was something like this, and I didn't know what to do. Like I literally went over there and like looked for the door, and then went back to my husband and was like, I can't get into the Starbucks, there's no door. And what it turns out is that the door was actually a sliding door. So there was no handle, there was no doorway casing. It was literally just like one of the windows that slid. And until I saw somebody else do it, I like could not figure out how to get in the door. And then of course, once I saw it, I understood. But I was looking for my old approach to getting into a business, which is a doorway casing, handle, etc. And then the other type of fixation that you can have is when you're looking for a new use for a common object. So this is an example, right, of somebody who took something that's very commonly used, right, in order to like rake up the leaves, and they use it for a new purpose to make s'mores kind of in a more effective way. And as you probably already guessed, one of the ways to overcome these fixations is to utilize creativity. So being able to come up with novel and valuable ideas. One of the ways that we utilize creativity is we think of as many possible solutions as there can, which is called divergent thinking, as opposed to thinking of just one possible solution that is the answer, which is more convergent thinking, right? And one of the ways that we test creativity is we give like a shape or several shapes, and we say like make a picture from it, and then we kind of evaluate the novelty and the value of the ideas that they drew from the original kind of shape. And we'll try one of these in class so you can kind of see. All right, so make sure you stop here. Today we talked about basics of human thought, strategies that humans use, and problems and errors that we make along the way. That's all for now, AP Psychos, and remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.